B-17 Flying Fortress Leader has arrived at your house. Open the package. Lift the box out. Get an X-Acto knife. Remove the shrink wrap. Gently open the lid. Put your nose down and smell the game. Gently remove the components. Leaf through the rule book. You're ready to play. The 8th Air Force flew daylight strategic bombing missions out of England from August of 1942 to April of 1945. The primary mission was to destroy the Luftwaffe, and to do that, they bombed facilities that contributed to aircraft production as well as airfields where aircraft were based. As well as their primary mission, they were also given secondary missions to destroy other industry targets, such as U-boat pens, when the U-boats were rampaging through the Atlantic, to oil facilities, to the V-1 and V-2 rocket sites, where rockets were launched into England. B-17 Flying Fortress Leader comes with 11 campaigns that represent the variety of missions and time frames that they operated within. So there are several ways that you could break down those 11 campaigns. You could do it by year, by technology, by difficulty. I decided to break them down and talk about them by campaign duration, which I broke into short, medium, and long, and the focus of the campaign, whether it's an industry focus, as I mentioned earlier, talking about hidden U-boats, pens, or the V1, V2 sites, or whether we're using secondary missions, which secondary mission cards define what target types you're going after and success criteria and the effects of success or failure of meeting those objectives. So I'll talk about those in a little more detail later. From a short, medium, and long perspective, they play differently. Let me talk a little bit about how time is measured during the campaign or in the game, and then we'll get back to how that affects the duration. So the calendar is divided up into years, months, and weeks. It's basically your missions are flown weekly, so that during a week you may fly 1 or 2 missions against targets. Then you advance to the next week and fly 1 or 2 missions to that target, and the next week and the next week, depending on how many weeks you have in the month. The way it's set up, you can see June, July, and August have 4 weeks that you would run missions for those months, because it's in summer and weather was typically better and they ran more missions, versus 3 for like September, October, and November, 3 weeks, and then December, January, February, you run missions for 2 weeks. And then once the weeks are complete for that month, then there's some end of month steps that you go through where we get your aircraft replenishment, and then you look at the Luftwaffe production and see whether you add additional Luftwaffe squadrons to the map, and a couple other miscellaneous steps. So coming back to the campaign breakout, then so you can see, so for the short months that are 1 month or less, so there's two campaigns that are 1 month, and then there's a campaign Operation Argument or Big Week, which can't leave Big Week out of a strategic bombing campaign. That one actually uses days, 6 days, where you basically play the day as a week. So at the beginning I said, well, where do you start? Well, this is the best place to start with a short campaign, because you're only flying missions during the short campaigns for the weeks, and you're skipping all of the end of month steps for the replenishment and a production capability, so you don't really need to worry about those steps. So you can start by just learning how to run the missions, run your missions against your targets, and then add up your score and evaluate your performance. Another thing about the short campaigns, you can see they're all industry focused, meaning they identify a particular industry that you're going to be attacking. Typically, those industry targets are worth double the victory points of the basic core targets that you're going after, like aircraft factories and airfield targets, which you do have in the short campaigns as well. But you don't need to worry about, the aircraft factories producing Luftwaffe squadrons and having them deployed to the map. So uh, that's not a big deal as far as executing the campaign. So you select the targets that you want to attack based on the victory points and maybe where the Luftwaffe squadrons are deployed on the map, and you do your best, you fly your missions, and then you do your evaluation. So it's pretty straightforward from a campaign. So each campaign identifies how many aircraft factory targets you start off with and maintain throughout the campaign. 1942, the earlier campaigns have fewer aircraft factory targets, and then as you get further and further into the bombing campaign, you have additional aircraft factory targets that you would have. So each aircraft factory target has a supply/victory point number associated with it. And so at the beginning of the month, you add up, for each target, you put a supply counter down on the monthly factory track down there. And at the end of the month, in this case, if you didn't destroy any of the aircraft factory targets, there would be a total of 3 plus 9. So 12 Luftwaffe squadrons would be created, which may or may not all end up on your European map. So you can see it's pretty important to not ignore destroying aircraft factory targets. So in this case, let's assume that we destroyed 2 aircraft factory targets, and it's the end of the month now, so we only have the 2 left. So in this case, we would only have 7 Luftwaffe squadrons created. Again, as I mentioned, some or all of them may end up getting placed back onto the European map, which means for the next month you have more Luftwaffe squadrons to deal with. So aircraft factory targets are important for the medium and longer campaigns. You can't ignore them because as every Luftwaffe squadron is added, it makes it that much more likely that you're going to be attacked by bandits as you're executing your mission. And then the other target types that are important to remember, again, in the medium and long campaigns, are the airfield targets. And basically, what they do is, as you destroy airfield targets, you increase the chances of removing Luftwaffe squadrons from the map. So if you destroy an airfield target that has, let's say, a victory point total of 4, you would slide that on the bandit's disrupted track, you slide it over 4 spaces, and then if you destroy, let's say, another bandit during a mission and it hits 5, once you've destroyed 5 bandits or disrupted 5 bandits, then you can remove a squadron from the map. So if the map's starting to get crowded, airfield targets are definitely a good target to start looking at attacking. The long campaigns are pretty challenging. Long-term management of the European map is critical. You need to keep the number of Luftwaffe squadrons on the map low, which means focusing in on the air bases and aircraft factories, but also most of them have secondary missions that you have to succeed at, or you face penalties. Probably one of the most challenging campaigns, the Allied invasion, which is from June of 44 to April 45. So this is after the D-Day landings. Your job as a bombing campaign is to help advance the theater from France all the way into Berlin. A lot of the secondary missions include tactical bombing, which was done after D-Day against German units, and success or failure of those missions help advance or keep the European theater from advancing to Germany. So the campaigns that use secondary missions instead of focusing on one industry throughout the entire campaign Use a deck of secondary mission cards, and every 2 months you're assigned a different industry to attack. The secondary mission cards identify how many of the target types to draw. It tells you what the goal is. So in this case, for the U-boat operations 1, destroy at least 6 U-boat VPs. And then depending on how well you do after the 2-month evaluation period, determine whether you succeeded, met the objective, or failed. If you succeed, then typically you get a reward. If you fail, typically there's a penalty. Along with success or failure, there's usually some modifiers to some of the theaters, which theaters, as they advance, for example, the Russian theater, as it advances, it starts soaking up some of those Luftwaffe squadrons that are being created by the aircraft factories. So advancement is good, and not advancing is bad. Alright, so the first campaign that I would recommend playing, once you've opened the box and got your components laid out, it would be the U-boat focus campaign. It's 1942. You only have typically enough weekly SO points to run one mission a week. Luftwaffe response -2 means that you're not going to have as many bandits attacking you, and it's probably the best introductory campaign to start with. Alright, well, that's my introduction to the campaigns. When I get the game, I'm planning on creating a couple other tutorial videos to help walk you through the game and how it plays, and hope you enjoy it. Thanks.